In this post-apocalyptic world overrun by zombies, there exists a hidden paradise. While other survivors have long been eating bland, tasteless food, here you can still enjoy steak paired with red wine. On the day the apocalypse broke out, while everyone else was evacuating, he stayed hidden in his bunker, waiting. Once everyone had left, he silently opened the bunker entrance and ventured out fully armed. After confirming there were no people around, he removed his mask, revealing a satisfied smile, but there was no time to rest. First, he drove to his neighbor's house, hooked a trailer to his pickup truck, and removed all the seats from the trailer. He then drove to a gas station, quickly filling all the tanks while the power was still on. After that, he broke into a gas company and opened the pipeline leading to his home. His next stop was a hardware store where he crazily bought various tools, even taking air conditioning hoses. As he completed his purchase, the power cut out. But he already had a large generator set up in his backyard. He connected it to the gas line, and with a flick of a switch, the generator roared to life. The next step was to build defensive fortifications. He used an electric fence to surround the nearby area and cleared the trees around the fence to create a wide open space. He then planted mines and flamethrower traps, completing the basic defense structure. Finally, he gathered food, started a vegetable garden, raised some livestock, and built a meat locker. This apocalyptic paradise was now fully formed. In the following days, except for occasional supply runs, he spent most of his time enjoying the tranquility of his sanctuary. Life was quite comfortable until one day, 4 years later, when he was making weapons, the alarm sounded repeatedly. Zombies had fallen into his traps again. Fully armed, he went out to deal with them. To his surprise, he heard a human voice from the trap. It was the first time in 4 years he had heard another human. To be cautious, he loudly asked if the person had any weapons. After receiving a negative answer, he approached to check. Feeling some compassion for another survivor, he finally lowered a ladder, pulling the man up after confirming that he was not infected. The man claimed to be hungry and swore he wouldn't reveal the location of the paradise. Reluctantly, the bearded man brought him into the sanctuary, offering him the worst steak and wine available. Even the worst was enough to astonish the newcomer, as red wine had long been extinct in the surviving regions. Furthermore, the newcomer had just enjoyed a hot shower. After eating and drinking, the newcomer was even more reluctant to leave. Despite promising to leave immediately, he kept finding excuses to stay. When he began to play a sad song, the bearded man's wary expression softened. Living alone, no matter how comfortable, was ultimately lonely. Having a companion, even if it was another man, seemed like a good idea. Thus, the paradise gained a second inhabitant. However, 3 years later, behind the bearded man's back, Frank made contact with the outside world using a radio and even befriended a woman survivor, planning to invite her to the paradise. This caused a huge argument between the two, but in the end, the bearded man relented and warmly welcomed the woman and her husband, Joel. Joel and his wife had been living in a survivor's camp, which had plenty of weapons and ammunition, but lacked living supplies, opposite to the paradise. Zombie attacks were unceasing, and the paradise's ammunition was running low, especially the high-voltage electric fence, which was badly in need of repair. Thus, even though the negotiations were not very pleasant, they were necessary. In the end, Bill agreed to establish a trade network. Before Joel left, he gave a sincere warning: you need to protect yourself and Frank. He wasn't just talking about Frank. The supplies in the survivor zone were becoming increasingly scarce, causing desperate individuals to flee. Their methods of searching for resources followed the law of the dark forest, making the paradise more dangerous with each passing day. Joel's prediction proved accurate. Every year, waves of invaders would launch sneak attacks. Although the traps outside always thwarted them, the number of invaders kept growing. Finally, on a rainy night, Bill was hit in the abdomen by a grenade. Surprisingly, Frank didn't take this opportunity to seize power, but genuinely tried to save Bill. The scene shifts to 10 years later. Ironically, Frank was the first to end up in a wheelchair and the first to want to end everything, suffering daily from cancer. One day, he looked at Bill with deep emotion, hoping Bill would pour white powder into his wine to end his miserable life. Although Bill was heartbroken, he finally agreed. The scene shifts again to 2 months later. Joel and Ellie, after a long journey, finally arrived at the paradise. This time, the gate did not open automatically. Joel had to use the password to enter. The once vibrant paradise was now covered in yellow leaves and wilted flowers. Sensing something was wrong, Joel walked in cautiously. Ellie, curious and never having seen a normal life, began exploring. She soon found a letter and a car key on the dining table. Meanwhile, Joel discovered the bedroom door was locked from the inside and decided to check the back window, only to find Ellie wandering around. Bill and Frank had built a deep bond. Bill never intended to poison Frank, but decided to put the powder in their wine and joined Frank in death. Bill left the bunker password in the letter, hoping Joel could use the weapons inside to protect the one he loved most. Joel was overwhelmed with emotion. Once enjoyed meals in this courtyard, now he was alone, wondering if it was fortunate or unfortunate. Despite the sorrow, life had to go on. Joel and Ellie left the paradise resolutely, starting their journey. Their first stop was Kansas City. To their shock, the once bustling city had no zombies, and the military's shelter gates were wide open, with no one in sight. Any cry for help in such a situation would arouse suspicion, especially for the experienced Joel. Without hesitation, he floored the gas pedal. However, it turned out to be a trap. A rock shattered the windshield, followed by professional road spikes, causing the vehicle to crash into a nearby laundromat. Before they could recover, gunfire erupted. Joel quickly told Ellie to hide behind the wall while he prepared to fight back. He took a rifle from the car and waited for the right moment. Joel yelled and began firing back, while Ellie crawled through a small hole to another room. With Ellie safe, Joel could fight without worry. He timed his shots with the attacker's reloads, quickly taking down one. He reloaded and anticipated the next move, realizing the attackers would try to sneak in. A gun barrel appeared, and Ellie froze in fear, but Joel's shot from outside took out another attacker. During a reload, another assailant rushed in, catching Joel off guard, but Ellie was instantly subdued. No matter how hard she struggled, it was futile. Seeing Joel on the verge of defeat, Ellie suddenly appeared behind the man and shot him in the leg, successfully saving Joel. Faced with death, anyone would feel fear, especially since the attacker was young. But it was all in vain, as Joel never believed in letting the enemy escape. To prevent Ellie from becoming like him, Joel sternly told her to hide behind the wall. The cries for help from the attacker ceased in Ellie's tears. What Joel didn't expect was that this man was the son of Kathleen, the local raider leader. Kathleen had once swiftly cleared the city of zombies and brutally suppressed all traitors. Now, with her son dead, she wouldn't let it go. Soon, a fleet of cars emerged from the camp, dispersing throughout the streets. Numerous armed men began sweeping every room. Unexpectedly, Joel and Ellie hadn't fled far, but were hiding in a laundromat across the street. As the chaos ensued outside, Joel started teaching Ellie how to protect herself. Once the commotion died down, he quickly led Ellie to another building, needing to get to a high enough vantage point to find a safe escape route. However, seeing the seemingly endless stairs, Joel realized the reality of their situation. Even if he pushed himself to the limit, he could only make it to the 33rd floor and would need to rest for the night before continuing. Before sleeping, Joel set up broken glass by the door to prevent any sneaky attacks. Exhausted, Joel fell asleep immediately, but he was startled awake by a noise to find Ellie being held at gunpoint, with a cold barrel pointing at him. Fortunately, the intruder wasn't there to kill, but to negotiate. Ellie intervened, allowing them to have a conversation. The intruder, Henry, and his brother, Sam, were also enemies of Kathleen. They had been hiding in a nearby building, barely surviving. While out searching for food, they saw Joel's skills and decided to approach him, hoping to escape the city together. Henry knew a way out. That night, led by Henry, they ventured into the city's underground maintenance tunnels. Despite Henry's assurances that there were no zombies, Joel remained cautious, leading the way. It turned out Henry was right. There were no zombies, and they even found a room filled with toys and a spacious football field. Ellie and Sam, both born after the apocalypse, had never experienced a carefree childhood and were overjoyed. Seeing their excitement, Joel decided to rest there for 2 hours. During this time, everyone got to know each other better. They learned that Sam had a serious illness as a child, and Henry had offended Kathleen while trying to get medicine for him. Although Sam survived, he lost his ability to speak. Happiness was fleeting. They safely passed through the tunnel and reached the city's edge. Now, they just had to cross a small bridge to escape Kathleen's territory. Unexpectedly, a sniper was positioned on the bridge, initially meant to prevent zombie invasions, but now a threat to them. Joel decided to sneak around and deal with the sniper. Upon opening the door, Joel was stunned to find an elderly man. Joel didn't want to hurt him and told him to hand over the weapon and leave, but the old man resisted, forcing Joel to shoot him. As Joel picked up the sniper rifle, Kathleen's voice came through the radio. instructing the old man to stall for just 1 minute until reinforcements arrived. Joel quickly shouted to Ellie, but the distance was too great for his voice to be heard. Meanwhile, Catherine's armored vehicle appeared at the end of the road. The bulldozer in front was plowing through all obstacles with ease. Joel tried to shoot the driver, but his panic caused him to miss several shots. The bulldozer was clearly targeting Ellie, who was about to be crushed. Finally, Joel steadied himself and hit the driver, causing the bulldozer to swerve and crash into a roadside shop. Gasoline spilled out and ignited, creating a thick cloud of smoke that blocked Catherine's pursuit. Henry took the opportunity to help Ellie, and they hid behind a car. But before they could find an escape route, the smoke dissipated, leaving them exposed. Unexpectedly, the burning bulldozer began to sink into the ground, accompanied by monstrous roars. The Catherine's troops had no time to worry about Ellie. They hurried to the edge of the pit. Shortly after, a horde of zombies emerged, attacking in a frenzy. Despite their efforts to shoot back, the group was quickly overwhelmed. Amidst the chaos, a zombie lunged at Ellie but was shot dead by Joel before it could harm her. Ellie quickly climbed into a car, watching the hellish scene unfold. Their troubles were far from over. A larger, more powerful zombie emerged from the pit. This hulking creature was impervious to ordinary attacks and easily decapitated one of Catherine's guards. Meanwhile, Ellie, under Joel's cover, tried to escape with Henry but was spotted by Catherine. Facing her gun, Ellie looked towards a graceful zombie nearby. In the chaos, Joel arrived just in time, allowing everyone to escape the besieged area. Though they had narrowly escaped death, the group's nerves were frayed. Ellie, despite her efforts, was despondent. She finally revealed her fear. Can a person remain conscious after turning into a monster? This question brought tears to Ellie's eyes. She remembered Tess's warning about being infected, realizing the significance of her own situation. Even more poignant was that the person in question was only an 8-year-old child, Sam. After a moment of hesitation, she revealed her bitten arm, hoping to comfort Sam by claiming her blood had healing powers. She cut her hand and smeared her blood on Sam's wound, hoping to give him some solace in his final moments. The next morning, Ellie awoke to find Sam is sitting motionless by the bed. As she approached to check on him, Sam, now a zombie, attacked her. Joel rushed to help but was stopped by Henry, who understood what Joel intended to do. Seeing Ellie in danger, Henry hesitated but then shot his brother Sam. He couldn't bear this harsh reality, and shortly after, he shot himself as well. The scene was intense, with emotions running high. Joel ultimately buried the siblings, while Ellie left a message on a writing board at Sam's grave. Joel didn't respond, but turned away, leaving with Ellie. The message on the board contained just 3 words, but they were laden with Ellie's emotions. Joel, deeply moved, followed her without a word. They reached a river. If they could cross the bridge, they would be safe on the other side. Fortunately, their passage was uneventful, encountering no zombies or marauders. This allowed them to relax completely, even joking loudly in front of the dam. But when they turned around, they were faced with a group of riders on horseback. The riders even released a dog trained to detect infection. The dog started sniffing Joel frantically. Luckily, he had never been infected by the cordyceps fungus, so he wasn't afraid of the inspection. However, Ellie's immune system made her a carrier of the fungus, and the dog began growling at her. Joel became extremely anxious. To his surprise, instead of attacking, the dog began playing with her. It turned out the dog was only testing if Ellie was dangerous. When Joel mentioned he was looking for his brother, Tommy, a woman among the riders quickly rode forward. The scene shifted to Joel following the riders to a well-fortified settlement. This place had many guards, thick wooden gates, and was like a paradise with shops, parks, hospitals, and schools, forming a self-sufficient town. Most importantly, Joel found his brother Tommy there. The two embraced tightly after being separated for so long. Joel had crossed half of America to find his brother and was finally relieved. However, during a meal, Joel felt uneasy because a woman he didn't know was sitting between him and Tommy. To Joel's surprise, Tommy held the woman's hand and announced they were married. This was hard for Joel to accept, not because he didn't want his brother to be happy, but because he had been worried sick about losing his only family. Joel's wife, Tess, had even sacrificed herself during the journey to find Tommy. Now that Tommy was safe and happy, why hadn't he sent any word? Joel was even more disheartened when Tommy refused to help escort Ellie to the Fireflies' camp. Tommy's reason for not going made Joel even more frustrated. Meanwhile, the woman, Maria, was braiding Ellie's hair and subtly suggesting that Joel was dangerous, which irritated Ellie. Seeing this, Maria tried to play nice by saying the people Joel killed were innocent. Ellie lost her patience and told Maria off, making it clear that she was only following Joel's instructions and hoped Ellie wouldn't make the same mistake. Back with Joel, he had no choice but to tell Tommy about Ellie's immunity, hoping Tommy would take her to the Fireflies' camp. After all, Ellie was humanity's hope, and Joel felt too old and deaf in one ear to safely escort her. Tommy couldn't refuse such a request and eventually agreed. But that night, Joel had a change of heart, not wanting to risk Tommy's safety. The next morning, he gave Ellie the choice, and they decided to continue the journey together. Their journey to the university where the Fireflies were supposed to be was surprisingly smooth, taking only 5 days. However, they found the camp deserted, filled with aggressive monkeys. In the command room, now taken over by monkeys, Joel found a map showing other Firefly locations. Suddenly, they heard voices outside. A group of armed raiders was approaching. Joel and Ellie tried to escape through the back door, but a raider spotted them. Joel quickly overpowered him but got stabbed in the process. They managed to escape on horseback, but the bumpy ride worsened Joel's injury. Eventually, Joel couldn't hold on and fell off the horse. Ellie, determined not to lose someone she cared about again, tried to stop the bleeding. She ignored Joel's pleas to leave and desperately searched for anything that could help. She found only a sewing kit and used it to stitch Joel's wound, finishing the painful task with determination. She then administered an anti-inflammatory drug, even though she didn't fully understand how to treat injuries. After failing to get a response from Joel, Ellie reluctantly injected the medication into his wound. The next day, Ellie went out again to look for food. Suddenly, nearby crows took flight, startling her. Realizing someone was approaching, she spotted 6 fully armed people walking towards her, led by David. Without thinking, Ellie hurriedly ran back to wake Joel, but he was still very weak and could barely open his eyes. Helpless, Ellie placed a knife in Joel's hand and took one last look at him before saying, Okay, someone is coming. I'll draw them away from you. If anyone comes, you have to kill them. Don't let them find you." After speaking, Ellie ran out of the basement, blocked the entrance with a cabinet, and then rushed towards the group. She managed to attract their attention, but as the men prepared to pursue her, David shouted for everyone not to harm her. However, the men were already consumed with vengeance and ignored David's orders. They first shot the horses at the entrance and then aimed their guns at Ellie. At the last moment, David arrived and stopped them, even carrying Ellie back to their camp himself. He ordered 2 men to bring back the horse meat, leaving 3 others to search for Joel. Despite their small number, the men soon found the wooden house where Joel was hiding. They noticed a cabinet that seemed out of place, and behind it, they discovered a door to the basement. However, they were unprepared for Joel's ambush, and he killed one of them with a knife before collapsing from exhaustion. Determined to protect Ellie, Joel mustered the strength to stand again. Meanwhile, Ellie woke up in a cage with David sitting outside. He started a conversation, curious about her name. Despite her brave front, Ellie was filled with fear. She had never been in such a dire situation alone, especially not against such ruthless raiders. On the other hand, Joel managed to capture the other 2 men and, though still weak, extracted the location of their camp through interrogation. Joel then set off to find Ellie, following the trail of blood and eventually locating a warehouse filled with cleaned and tightly wrapped human remains, stored like food. Ellie's defiance infuriated David, who decided to pull her out of the cage, but she bit his hand, causing him to lose his composure. He dragged her to a table, ready to execute her with a cleaver, but Ellie screamed that she was infected. David didn't believe her until she showed the bite mark on her arm, causing him to hesitate. Seizing the moment, Ellie grabbed a knife and attacked, then ran towards the exit, only to find all exits locked. Hiding behind a cabinet, Ellie waited for an opportunity. Using the skills she had learned from Joel, she silently found a weapon and launched a surprise attack on David. Though she was knocked to the ground, she fought relentlessly and finally managed to reach the weapon and kill David. Ellie and Joel were now close to their destination. The headquarters of the Rebel Firefly organization is located in the western United States. It can be reached by passing through this abandoned building. However, when Ellie climbed up, she seemed to see something and ran off without even lowering the ladder. This alarmed Joel, who quickly set up the ladder and climbed after her. When he saw the scene before him, he also stood still, mesmerized. This dreamy scene is one of the most classic moments in the game. To recreate this classic scene, the crew even invited real location scouts to make a cameo appearance. Ellie's worries seemed to vanish in this beautiful scene, but while she was immersed in joy, she didn't notice Joel's strange look or realize that his later outburst was rooted in this moment of strangeness. After catching his breath, Joel finally witnessed a moment of perfect harmony between man and nature. This rekindled his desire to see Ellie grow up happily. As a result, he suggested not going to the Firefly base, as the Fireflies were not entirely benevolent, and he didn't want to risk everything for a mission forced upon them. However, after much consideration, Ellie decided to complete the mission to save humanity, because she didn't want to see anyone else die, especially not because of her. To reassure Joel, she promised that once everything was over, she would go wherever he wanted. The journey ahead was peaceful, without any infected or humans. Ellie and Joel walked slowly, and Joel even asked Ellie to tell him some jokes. Ellie happily took out a book of jokes and began reading. Unexpectedly, a sudden ambush knocked them unconscious. When Joel woke up, the first thing he saw was Marlene. He anxiously asked about Ellie's condition, but Marlene seemed to be hiding something, praising Joel's skills instead, and implying that only someone as cold and ruthless as him could have brought Ellie safely. Joel didn't buy it and kept pressing until Marlene revealed the truth. The doctors discovered that Ellie had been carrying the cordyceps fungus in her body for years, and it had developed a chemical that made other cordyceps think she was one of them, preventing infection. By extracting and cultivating this fungus, they could mass-produce the chemical to save humanity. Despite Marlene's grand vision, Joel's only concern was Ellie. When he realized the procedure would kill her, he vehemently opposed it. Marlene, however, was determined not to miss any chance to save humanity, even if it meant sacrificing Ellie, her friend's child. In Joel's eyes, family always came first, and he wouldn't let anyone harm Ellie. Realizing Joel wouldn't be persuaded, Marlene ordered her men to escort him out of the city and gave him Ellie's switchblade as a keepsake. She warned her men to shoot Joel if he resisted, but 2 guards were no match for Joel, and anyone standing between him and Ellie would meet a violent end. As they reached the stairs, Joel snapped, unleashing his fury on the Firefly base. Joel tore through the base without caution, driven only by the need to save Ellie. He searched every corner of the hospital, finally reaching the pediatric floor, a place full of life and hope. But here, Ellie was about to lose her life. A defiant doctor tried to resist and was promptly shot by Joel, setting the stage for the sequel and sealing Joel's tragic fate. The scene shifted to Joel carrying Ellie into the underground garage, only for Marlene to confront him. This led to the film's most controversial point. Marlene believed Ellie should have the choice to sacrifice herself, but Joel didn't want to let her choose, knowing she would likely choose to sacrifice herself. Even if she chose to live, she would carry the guilt forever. The mission's burden had already weighed heavily on her, and adding guilt would crush her. So, Joel made the decision for her. After placing Ellie in the car, he returned to Marlene and